Hi, again, this is the Catholic Lady, and we're reading Great Lion of God by Taylor Caldwell. We're in chapter 38, and this is part 2. Saul has just encountered Elisheba, the young girl that wanted to marry him years ago, outside of the home of her sister where she's been staying. At what moment was she in his arms he could never remember. But with acute sensation of joy, he felt the pressure of her young breasts against his chest, and the warmth of her body against his own. And then his head bent, and their lips met in hot and tender passion. All his flesh shuddered with an anguish of rapture when she put her arms about his neck, and her sleeves fell back, and the warm roundness of her flesh was unimpeded. This was quite different from the raptures of the spirit which he had known, yet in some fashion it was not too dissimilar. He held her tightly in his arms, as if afraid that she might be turned into mist or vanish, and he heard her warm murmurings against his throat. And his heart rejoiced, and his eyes melted into tears of happiness, and yet his mind roared against him. He was betraying God, to whom he had pledged his miserable life in absolute service. It was betraying the Messiah, who had forgiven his monstrous sins and had condescended to rescue him and give him mission, though the mission, after a year in Tarsus, still eluded him. Another thought shrieked in his brain. Was the Messiah permitting this new temptation of him, this glorious temptation from Satan, to test his worthiness? But how sweet was woman flesh, and the scent of a woman, and the softness of a woman! How could anything so desirable, so fulfilling, so lovable, and so full of beauty be sinful? Saul's head roared with mingled passion and horror at himself. Now he could hear what Elisheba was whispering against his throat, and it was the love song of the Queen of Sheba, and never had it sounded so heart-shaking. As the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Stay me with flagons, and comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me, the voice of my beloved. The whole spirit of Saul thrilled and leaped at these wondrous words, and his lonely heart knew the heart of love and desire and total ecstasy. And he held Elisheba closer to him and murmured in reply in the words of Solomon, "You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravaged my heart with one of your eyes. How fair is your love! How much better is your love than wine, and the smell of your ointments than all spices. Your lips drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the scent of Lebanon." For an instant, terrible to him, a thought like fire flashed through his brain. Was not human love like this lovelier than love for God? And was not the touch of a woman, of a beloved woman, more complete and more comforting than all else? Human love was not forbidden by God. In truth, it was blessed. He, Saul, had none to love him now, but this girl, this delight in his arms, this fragrant sweetness against his throat, and he knew that she loved him, not in wantonness, but in truth and humility and joy. His loneliness overwhelmed him. The emptiness of his days was like a cold lake creeping to his heart. He had only to take the gift that she offered, and life would hum with color and scent and laughter and pleasure and contentment. Then he saw the road before him, which he had accepted with reverence and rejoicing, and he knew he must travel that way alone. He would not take Elisheba and her distractions with him. His vows must be fulfilled. The road was bitter and hard, but at the end was a fulfillment beyond dreaming and imagining. It was better to marry, while it was better to marry than to burn. Some men must not marry, and he was convinced that he was one of these. In the total service of God, a man must deny himself all things, even human love and human yearning. A man so dedicated could bring nothing but sorrow and bewilderment and loss to another human being, for he could not give his whole heart to that being. Elisheba must not be hurt. She must not be wounded, or he himself would expire in his pain and his remorse that he could not give her his whole self and his whole spirit and life. Gently then, and almost with despair, but with resolution, he disengaged the clinging arms of Elisheba and led her to a spot of darkness near the walls of her brother's house, and they sat down together. And as she clung to him and rested her head on his shoulder, and in spite of his fierce resolve, he could not put her away. The warm grass under them was bruised, and the shower of jasmine blossoms fell over them like rain, and the great stars, scarlet, blue, white, golden, seemed to flame within reach. Somewhere a nightingale sang, with so poignant a theme that the hearts of the young man and woman listening opened and quivered with mingled sadness and exultation. One of Elishaba's breasts leaned against Saul's arm, and he held her hand and thought how beautiful and peaceful it would be to die like this and never wander again, never search, never hunger, never know despair. He tried to speak, but his lips would not open. So it was with the prescience of love that Elishaba spoke softly. I have loved you long, my heart's glory and delight, since I was a child, and you were but a youth with your books in my grandfather's house. I saw you before you saw me. I heard your voice before you heard mine. When I was a girl, you were my dream of paradise, the vision of an angel, a young Moses. And then you went away for many years, and I married, for it was my duty. But it was without love. Never was your face absent from my thoughts. It was you, and not my husband, who stood with me under the marriage canopy. Elishaba drew a deep and crying breath, and then continued in her low and dulcet voice. No, never did I forget you, my beloved one, not for an hour. Yet always did I know, even as a child, that you could belong to none on earth and only to God. My grandfather spoke of this in comfort to me, but I had known always. You cannot take me with you, for the way you go must be taken alone. For one loves you more than I, and from his call you dare not retreat. I implore but one thing of you, my beloved. Do not deny me your presence after this night. Do not refrain from letting me gaze upon you. No glance of mine will disturb or distract you. No smile will cause you to falter. I ask only that I see you in my brother's house, and that I bring you wine and meat and fresh linen, and serve your bread. Your shadow falling upon me will be brighter than the sun to my eyes. The sound of your step and your voice will be my consolation, my contentment. I am only a frail woman. I could not live henceforth if you deprived me of the sight of your face. She lifted his hand to her lips and humbly kissed it. Then she looked at him, and by the light of the stars he saw that she was whitely smiling, and that her eyes glistened and sparkled with tears. He had thought all women weak and suspect, more than a little contemptible, as well as dangerous. But now he saw a resolution and courage and self-denial that would have been glorious in the bravest man, and even in his agony he was awed and humbled, and his love for Elisheba became reverent as well as dear and beautiful beyond speaking. He took her slender face in his palms and bent and kissed her lips, and they were no colder nor saltier than his. Then he put her from him and rose and left her. She gazed after him until the night had taken him, and then with a little cry she fell on her face on the grass and moaned like a dying lamb. She did not stir until the first gray light of dawn paled the east. And that is the end of chapter 38. Join me next week for chapter 39.